You're listening to Packers Talk Network.
Packers Talk.
Welcome to the Packers Weekly Podcast, part of PackersTalk.com network. I'm your host, Miles Teddick, joined by your co-host, Tim Hamilton. We are diehard Packers fans. We just love talking about the Pack. We're not getting into all the national sports media talking points and nonsense. We are talking about the top topics around the Pack every week, breaking down the games during the season, and now getting into all the draft and rumors and goodies, free agency, all the fun stuff of the offseason. If y'all want to support the pod, please spike that like button for us. Head on over to the Packers Talk YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button for us, a little bell next to it for some bonus points. We would greatly appreciate those things. Those are big favors for us. We got some fun stuff to get into tonight. Definitely the personnel moves by the Packers, Bisaccia and Getsy, two very interesting names that I know nobody has any opinions about, so we'll not talk about those. And then we got some championship games that obviously the Packers are not a part of, but maybe changes the perspective of things just slightly where it's worth talking about. We might get into that a little bit. And then, of course, I have been at the Shrine Bowl the last several days, getting some good on-the-ground coverage here in DFW Frisco, and UNT have been gracious hosts. And then I know Globe Life Park and Jerry World will be the grand finale destinations. But there has been some good stuff coming out of the Shrine Bowl. Definitely some good stuff to talk about related to the Packers and who they may be targeting, who they have met with, who has stood out. I got all the goodies. So if you guys were with us last year when we were breaking down the draft, we were really having to rely on what's available on the internet. So getting this opportunity to be at the Shrine Bowl this year is really neat, getting to see these guys up close and personal and kind of understanding what they're going through, how they're being evaluated, what they look like off the film. Very interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. It's been a lot of fun. But first, of course, we got to have some words about our sponsor, Wisconsin's own Ticket King. For over 30 years, Ticket King has been providing Packers tickets to Packers fans. You can find them on the web at theticketking.com or visit their locations in Green Bay and Milwaukee. For direct links to specific Packers game tickets, go to packerstalk.com/tickets or browse their website at theticketking.com. Tim, good evening, sir. How you doing? How you feeling about these personnel moves we got today?
Good evening, Miles. I am, I guess, not surprised. I'm kind of, hey, whatever, I guess. It's interesting, though, that, Rich Bisaccia is still here and they've extended his contract. He may have some additional roles as game management assistant or whatever the hell they want to call him. And his special teams units continue to underperform. I don't get it. I don't know why he's still here. It's interesting that they fire the defensive line coach whose units didn't produce, and, his players that he was responsible for, none of those guys kind of took a step. They weren't developing, held him accountable. He lost his job. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's part of life in football and coaching. But Bisaccia's units continue to not produce and not improve, but he's still here. I'm not surprised by it because it's clear Matt LaFleur really values his input and really values having him on staff as a seasoned coach and a guy who's been he was an interim coach. So LaFleur really likes him. It's a head scratcher to me. It continues to be. I actually thought at times this year their special teams were a little bit better than they had been. Once they figured out the kicking issue and signed McManus, I think that was a huge change. And for a while there, I thought the coverage units were better. They weren't really getting much out of returns, but they didn't have a ton of opportunities as teams were just kicking it through the end zone. Keyshawn Nixon didn't have many opportunities. But then, we saw the play against Chicago in a final regular season game with the punt return that went for a touchdown and the fumble against the Eagles, which, we can debate it. It was, clearly recovered to most of us. We saw Keyshawn recover it, but still it was a fumble that they lost on the opening kickoff. And it's just, they're not helping the team, and they haven't helped the team. They've, in a lot of ways, have held back the team, but for some reason they continue to keep Bisaccia. I'm not surprised by it. I'm just disappointed in it, and I don't know what it's going to take for Matt to finally wake up and realize that he needs somebody else in that spot. And, there's been a lot of changes with special teams over the years with coaches, and they just can't get it right for whatever reason, but they still haven't gotten it right. But we're going to roll it back with Bisaccia. It's really disappointing, and it's not a good reflection on LaFleur that he continues to keep him in that position. So, as far as that goes, I just disappointed, but not really surprised by it. I didn't think he was going to make a move. So I don't know what are you feeling about it? Do you see it any other way than what, do you see any kind of like positive to keeping Bisaccia in place for this long?
I know I'm usually the well of optimism, right?
Yeah.
Look, I'm not like full of pessimism on this, but I know a lot of people want to immediately point to the special teams part of it, and for me, that's not even it, right? Like my grievance was that the last 3 weeks of this season, and arguably maybe more than that, leadership failed this team, right? A guy like Keyshawn Nixon is a vet. He's been there, done that. I do hold the coaches responsible for having these guys in the right mentality from the start of the game, right? Like for him to come out and fumble that opening kickoff to me is just like, it's a mentality thing, man. There's just no way. There's no, like, you have to be coming out like with priority one. This is my ball. And it's little things, and it is in the NFL. It's always little things, but that's a big thing to me. You know what I mean? Like Bill Belichick coach teams knew that fumbling was unacceptable. Like if you fumbled that opening snap, dude, you weren't going to see the field. It didn't matter who you were. And that's the part to me. It's like, not that I want that level of accountability in the moment, but I want the guys to have that kind of a healthy respect for that kind of discipline. And I just didn't feel like I felt like that Eagles game was way more about their like just feeling themselves. You know what I mean? And just like, oh, we got this, that kind of stuff. Instead of just being laser focused on getting the job done, right? And not thinking about anything outside of it, almost robotically, right? And that's the part that, to me, everybody wants to point to Bisaccia being the assistant head coach and kind of Matt LaFleur valuing his leadership and all of this and that. That's the part to me that seems to be failing, and credit to Nagler. Shout out to Nagler. He says since Bisaccia's been here, they went from an 8, win team to a 9-win team to an 11-win team. That is progress. No doubt about it. The disappointing part is where you should see more progress, right? Which is less mistakes, more discipline. And I think one example that Nagler used was that, when there were an elevated number of penalties on the special teams unit, Bisaccia's response was that, well, those were things we're willing to accept because of our philosophy.
You shouldn't be willing to accept
I don't like that
penalties. No. And I think with special teams, we're all at a point where like, can we just be okay? Can we just be an average special teams? Like we'll take average.
Not a liability.
Right. And like, that's not a good mentality to have, but that's how poorly the special teams have been. And I think maybe they were getting close to that, but it just never gets to that point. Right. And they still it always comes back to let you down on special teams. And it did in the playoff game. And it's just, they don't help you. Like you're not getting that benefit. Like you're not picking up extra yardage. You're not winning the hidden yardage battle. Right. Like there's just,
and the thing is you could at the very least protect the ball, and you didn't do that.
Right.
And that's the part. It's just like, dang, like, cut it out, man. And that's the discipline thing. That's the leadership thing. That's the part where I do look at Bisaccia and go, dude, like that's the part I don't want. Maybe you are a special teams guru, or maybe you're a great mentor to Matt LaFleur in a lot of ways. I'm not going to deny that. We don't get to see a lot of what goes on behind the doors over there. But there is a liability here. And to me, it looks like a leadership liability in a lot of ways. These mistakes that get repeated, the mentality these guys show up to games with, where you have slow starts, sloppy starts. They have to make mistakes and fall behind before they decide, oh, shoot, we got to get going. No, man. Oh, shoot, we got to get going was supposed to happen when you were warming up for the game. And as a coach, you have a responsibility of making sure that you ignite that. It doesn't mean that you have to find some inspiring, speech every day or every pregame, whatever. You have to have a routine that ignites that. Maybe it's your playlist for warmups. I don't know, but you have to have a routine that ignites that. And those are the things that it feels like are missing. It feels like, and I like this to some extent, but it feels like there's some sort of like, a gentleman's agreement that we're all professionals. We're going to take care of things here and show up to do our jobs. And you got you. Yep. I got me. Okay. Very good. And then when things go wrong, everybody's looking around. It's like, well, I don't know. We got to go back to the thing. He said he's got him. I got me, and it's just this like, no, it shouldn't be that. What it should be is like, well, there's an accountability and there's a philosophy around here. Clearly some things broke. There's accountability because those things aren't supposed to break. So we'll follow that path and go with it. And that was, again, to point to Bill Belichick's model that is kind of public because you've seen it, of if you fumble the ball, there's consequences, man. And sometimes they might even be irrational. But I think that sends the level of sincerity, like, hey, I mean this. Don't screw around. So when you're playing the game, there are things you prioritize. Another way of looking at this is more on the positive side, right? So something that we see defenders will do is prioritize punching the ball out. Peanut Tillman is all-time great at it, right? That was one of the things that made him unique and very, very good as a Bears DB for a long time, is that man came with boxing gloves, dude. He was going to come get that ball, and he forced more fumbles than anybody. And that takes a mentality. He has to be thinking about it to do that every play, where most guys, once the ball is in the playmaker's hands, their thought is, I got to get this guy down. And then if I can, I'll go for the ball. And that's why you see very few forced fumbles. It's not because guys can't. It's just most of the time they're not. That's not priority one locked in their mind. So point of all of this is leadership is responsible for establishing priorities and accountability and urgency for these things. They're the ones establishing that it's acceptable to make mistakes or not. And not that it's acceptable, just free willy make mistakes, whatever. But Bisaccia has said there's some level of mistakes they're willing to accept. And that to me is not good. That's not good leadership. That's not what you want running the youngest team in the league. And so what I would love to know is what LaFleur sees in Bisaccia. And again, this is not to say that doesn't exist. It just exists in a place that we don't get to see it. And I would love to know what it is. I'm sure it's something, and making him a better head coach is, for the future, all that good stuff. But I would love if we could just have some accountability for that, right? Like, what ultimately is being established, what is enabling the mistakes, what is leading to this 3-game collapse at the end of the season there, which there's some context we could throw on there after these NFC AFC championship games. But again, to me it's a failure of leadership. Bisaccia is part of that leadership philosophy, and now they've continued it. So hopefully I'm wrong, right? Hopefully there's room for development within that, but that's where I'm at.
You hope so. But I agree with you. I go back to accountability, like the repeated penalties over and over again, year in and year out on special teams. It's a constant.
It should just be unthinkable for a guy like Nixon to fumble the ball at all.
Yeah. But to me, it's like every time there's a punt return or a kick return, I'm holding my breath waiting for the flag to come out. Because it's just like we're so used to seeing that. And like, where's your accountability on that? Like, are you taking guys out of games? Are you benching them? Like, are you teaching the proper techniques to begin with, and the proper way of playing special teams, knowing the situation, knowing what you're setting yourself up to do on the returns, like
right. Are you putting guys in position to be successful?
And it sure doesn't seem that way. Right. And it sure doesn't seem that way. And it sure doesn't seem like they're holding them accountable. And if they're holding them accountable and you still have repeated mistakes,
you're not holding them accountable.
Then you're not truly holding them accountable, or You need to be held accountable because whatever you're doing is not working. So
Right.
that's a head scratcher. The other move was obviously Luke Getsy getting hired, which I don't think was a surprise. He apparently had come back and was working for them as a consultant, kind of like Robert Saleh was. They give him this title,
which I wasn't aware of until today, by the way. I didn't realize that.
It kind of came out. I can't remember if it came out before the playoffs or right after the playoff loss, where he was. I think it was right before the playoffs. Somebody saw him at practice, and it was like, yeah, he's been working with us for a while. He just wasn't on site like Saleh had been.
You know what that makes me think, right?
What's that?
It makes me think that he was partially responsible for the collapse at the end of the season. It's like, here's this guy who hasn't really done well since he left the Packers the last time. Last time he left the Packers, Aaron Rodgers was at the top of his game. So how much credit does Getsy get for that?
I don't know. Well, the funny thing is Saleh was the one that was working with the offense as a defensive coach. So
right.
Maybe we bring
I'm not willing to, he can have some of that too.
Yeah.
He's at the 49ers now after spending half the year with the Packers offense.
How does that happen? Whatever. But with Getsy, they give him offensive assistant title, whatever that means. I mean, we won't know what he's really doing till LaFleur speaks, and even then, we won't truly know what he's doing. But he's not the quarterbacks coach. Apparently, that's going to be whoever they decide to hire, which hasn't been announced yet. With Getsy,
I don't understand that either.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of people raved about him inside that building. LaFleur really liked him. Rodgers really liked him when he was here previously. He started with McCarthy, and then he left, and then LaFleur came in and had no background with him, but Rodgers had recommended him, and LaFleur interviewed him, brought him in. So I know a lot of people liked him. Obviously, it didn't work out for him as an offensive coordinator in Chicago or Vegas. They were pretty bad.
Context matters in both places. Yes, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. He never had a quarterback in any of those places, and he had, obviously bad organizations. So it's not all on him, but it didn't work out. And he's not coming here to call the plays or be the offensive coordinator. So whatever he's going to do, we don't really know. I don't want to judge it too much. If he's not a position coach, whatever his role is going to be, okay. We'll see. It's to me, it's not really surprising that they're bringing him back. I'm kind of fine with it until we figure out, until we find out what exactly he's doing, but it doesn't look like he's going to have any kind of position coaching role. Maybe he's there as, an overseer of the offense somehow, and whatever his duties may be, we'll find out. But so Getsy's back, and we're waiting for them to hire a quarterback coach and a D-line coach, which I would think is going to come about pretty soon here. And, I think those are, especially the D-line coach, is going to be a really big hire for them and really important.
Very important. You got too much talent there to ignore that and let that be a soft hire. Chris in with us, man. I feel you. I appreciate you being with us tonight. I feel you on this one, though. MLF let Saleh get the intimate details of the offense and take it back to San Fran. These guys are out here totally dissing MLF, even Ben Johnson. Wow. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. Like, you would expect, and I'm not like some kind of brilliant businessman. I'm in business, but a lot of people are. I can't there's a lot of jobs I would not have been allowed to go to a competitor after I left, like for 2 years. And not only did he go to a competitor, he went to like the competitor immediately. Now, you can't tell me he wasn't exposed to sensitive information. What was he helping with if he wasn't?
Yeah, but I mean,
that's just stunning to me.
You can't keep him from go. I mean, he was.
There's got to be some form of NDA in place to give a guy like that access to the insides of your offense. Like that.
I mean, Ben Johnson ran the Lions offense, and now he's the Bears head coach. He's going to play him twice a year. Like, you can't.
Sure,
you can't stop these guys.
By nature of that, the Lions have to hire a new offensive coordinator, so there's natural turnover in that. Like,
yeah, I mean,
tell me that LaFleur didn't think Saleh was about to go somewhere else.
Oh, I'm sure he figured he would. Like, he was going to either get it. I mean, he interviewed for head coaching jobs, and if it wasn't the Niners, somebody else would have hired him to be a defensive coordinator. So maybe LaFleur kept things from him, and he was only given specific duties, specific things. I
got to believe that's true.
I'm hoping that's what it is, but like, they can't block him. If he was a defensive coordinator, lateral move. They can block him from going and interviewing, but he was just a consultant. So it shouldn't be a surprising move that he went back to the 49ers. But there's nothing they could really do about it. And he just hoped that LaFleur didn't give him all the secrets. But, I don't know how much it even matters because the Niners and the Packers know each other so well with the Shanahan and LaFleur relationship and LaFleur and Saleh, even without him working a little bit with the Packers. Like, they know each other so well. They've played each other so many times. There's a lot of similarities in the teams. Like, how much, there are things that you don't want him knowing and bringing to the 49ers, but they know a lot already to begin with. So, I don't know. I don't know how big of a deal with it is, but I would have liked to have seen Saleh go to, some other team in the AFC, go to Jacksonville or something that, we're only going to see it once every 4 years.
I mean, out of respect to your buddy, for crying out loud, at least, but I guess no.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, moving on. The Eagles absolutely obliterated the Commanders, and all of a sudden the Packers defense looks elite for how they stopped the Eagles the way that they did. So do we feel better about the context of everything now?
I mean, maybe if you want to look at it that way. They certainly, of the 3 playoff games, they defensively, at least, they played the Eagles the best of the 3 teams for sure.
I mean, they played them really well. If you don't have that fumble at the beginning of the game, my goodness,
that's
3-0 at halftime, I think.
Yeah,
right?
I mean that's 7 points right there. That's not their fault.
Yeah,
and you can also look at it like the Packers were shorthanded too, right? Like,
I don't even need to go that far. I like being able to look at that and go, damn, Jeff Hafley did a good job.
Yes. I mean, especially like all around he did. Saquon, I know, went over 100 yards, but
still
they held him, other than a couple runs, they held him pretty well in check.
Hang on. I got to make sure I'm getting this right. Do you realize how much the Eagles ground game total had?
They were over 100 yards, but the yards per carry weren't high.
No. In this game against the Commanders.
Oh, they ran right through them. Yeah, I don't know what the final stats were, but I mean.
Okay, all right, so the final stats for the Eagles as a whole, rushing, including Kenny Pickett for 2 kneel downs, 230 yards, 6.4 average, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, well, some of those were the tush-push bullshit that they run, but still. Still. And I'll throw out to Washington's defense ain't very good, and even against the Lions were running through them. I think Jahmyr Gibbs was getting like 8 yards a carry, but they were turning the ball over. But bringing it back to the Packers, the Packers played them really well. They didn't give up much in the passing game at all. The 2 touchdowns that Hurts threw, he had 7 seconds to throw in the first one. That was the first touchdown of the game after the Nixon fumble. All day to throw. Yeah. And the second one, he threw a quick screen out to Dallas Goedert, who ran over Carrington Valentine. It was not like, anybody could have thrown that pass. Other than that, Jalen Hurts didn't do anything in that game. And
Saquon was relatively pedestrian. He had 119 yards and 4.8 yards a carry, no touchdowns.
Right, and I think he had 1 or 2 explosive runs, but for them,
his longest run was 17 yards.
Right, to hold him to 17 yards as his longest run when he's breaking off, 60-yarders against the Rams and the Commanders. Like, their defense
pretty
damn impressive.
The deal,
which goes back to the problems with the offense, which cost them the game.
Yeah, and I get it. Like, and then Chris, no matter what, it looks terrible. I got you, man. A loss is not good for sure, but part of the fan experience of the offseason is kind of figuring out where your team's at. And I think after getting a little bit more perspective on where these teams are in the postseason, especially when it's really all on the line, Jeff Hafley's defense showed up. They held up their end of the deal. If you're holding that offense that just did what they did in the NFC Championship game to 22 points, no touchdowns on the ground, and 5 yards a carry, which is, not bad, but, the 169 yards total rushing, that's a win. That should be a win, especially with your offense that, should be a high-powered offense. I get it. Yeah, the injuries are a thing for sure. But even after that, I think that there was a lot that the offense failed at with that game. And, that's where, again, it comes back to leadership for me and mentality and preparation and where these guys were at when they started the game. And it just wasn't good. It just wasn't good. So anyway, definitely not trying to justify that the Packers are ready to win a Super Bowl yet, but I do think there's a lot of reason to believe that they have some very important pieces to winning a championship. And two of them are an elite defense, which I think it's safe to say they have an elite defense at this point, and a top-notch runner. And they got a top-notch runner. So if you can bolster your lines, make your D-line better, make your O-line better, and your quarterback can just operate better, you don't even need to add weapons to anything. You're going to, right? But I don't think you need to, right? You just need to keep doing those things really, really well. And you won't have to ask too much from the passing game. And if you don't have to ask too much from the passing game, you've got plenty to use. You got your Tucker Kraft, your Jaden Reese. We don't have to go down the list. You're Packer fans. You know who you have. But that's the thing. And that's why I was sticking with this before, is like the Packers, I don't think are players away from a championship. I think they're leadership and maturation away from a championship. I still think that.
That could very well be the case. I think that's a lot of the problem.
And I think you can fix that with a good D-line coach, good hire there.
Yes.
And then I'll remain optimistic about Getsy, but I just have a hard time doing it.
Right. Well, we don't know what his role exactly is. I think
that's the other part that makes me kind of nervous. Is like,
right. Yeah.
There?
What's he doing? That's to be, but I think the D-line coach, you really hit on it, because they have all these guys that are high draft picks and paid a lot of money to Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark. None of them really had good years, right? Everybody kind of took a step back, other than Bretton Cox. We'll give him, he progressed. But he wasn't on the field for the first half of the year for whatever reason too.
Yeah. All that stuff.
And they made the right move and making a change at D-line coach. And that's going to be huge. But I think my fear, and I hope I'm wrong about it, and I'm not saying this is but I'm just kind of fearful that they're going to say, all right, we're changing the D-line coach. He's going to get the improvement and we're going to be okay because we really like the guys we have. Yes, you still need to add to those guys. Like, you can't just be like, yeah, I think we'll be okay, and kind of treat it like the cornerback room last year where they didn't do anything at cornerback until the 7th round. Like, you can't go and be like, yeah, well, third day of the draft, they end up taking a pass rusher. Like, no, you need immediate help to get pass rushers. And yet you want to see Devontae Wyatt and Lucas Van Ness and Carl Brooks, those guys develop and be better. Like, they're young players. You want to see Clark and Gary get back to their standards.
Exactly.
And it can definitely be helped with a D-line coach that's teaching them the right things and helping those guys develop in a second year in a defensive scheme. But you can't just be, we're changing the D-line coach and that's going to fix everything. Like, you need players too. They don't have enough of them. They need more pass rushers. And if you want to be an edge rusher, pass rusher, if you want to be an interior guy, I don't care. Just get pass rushers. Because we're seeing the Eagles' best pass rushers is defensive tackle, Jalen Carter, and he is wrecking games. He destroyed the Rams. I mean, to me, he was, between Jalen Carter and the fumbles, he was the biggest reason why the Eagles won that game against the Rams. And he's a defensive tackle, like rushing up the middle. So if that's what you got to do it. A
guy that can blow up the middle it's
huge.
I mean, it's one of the more valuable things in the NFL right now. And then, obviously quarterback, but yeah, if you can blow up the middle and you see that again, this is where I know it's fun to look at flashy objects, but fans are usually not good at looking at the substance of what really works, and just look at historical data. What do Super Bowl winning teams have? And they've all got a mountain in the middle. They've all got a dude in the middle that is a dude, right? You're Aaron Donald, you're Chris Jones. I mean, even the Patriots had Vince Wilfork for a long time. I mean, having that dude in the middle who can blow it up is just so valuable. because you can really wreck what an offense is trying to do in a lot of different ways. Like even, if they're trying to run, guard pulls and stuff like that in the run game, you can blow that up. You can obviously wreck it with a pass rush and give your edge rushers a chance to get a guy whenever he bails out of the pocket. That guy is huge. And
look at Chris Jones with the Chiefs, how good
exactly.
he is.
I mean, Chris Jones is the best example right now. He's
Incredible.
one of the best players in the NFL, and he's one of the most, if we were being honest, he's the most valuable player to the Chiefs right now. And that's no shots at Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes just doesn't have to play very good, right? He's not playing very good. His numbers are pretty terrible, but he's still managing the game the way that it needs to be. So it's not to say Pat Mahomes isn't doing anything. Don't overreact to the comment, but Chris Jones is very much more valuable to the totality of what that team's doing right now.
Yeah. And I mean, he's a reason why they can run all these awesome blitz packages, is because there's so much attention going to Chris Jones that you can't single block him. You can't have that before the snap. Like, we're going to leave him one-on-one. We have to dedicate 2 guys to him. And then you're leaving other spots vulnerable. And that's why they can bring blitzes that are bringing free rushers.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, I think with the Packers, build your lines. Like, when in doubt, get an offensive or defensive lineman. And the question is going to be, well, do you do it with a draft or free agency? My answer would be yes. Like, I don't care. Get pass rushers.
Yep.
Get and while they're at it too, get some offensive linemen for depth. That's another topic. But yeah, just go and get pass rushers. I don't care where you get them, how you get them. Don't let that just continue to fill up that position. And I know they got a lot of high price guys and high draft picks, but you can never have enough defensive linemen, guys that can affect the quarterback.
No, and I think that they're still going to embrace that philosophy of competition. You probably have guys that'll get cut in training camp that maybe you're surprised. I think that they'll end up bringing in guys where whether it's through the draft or through some other channels. I know Khalil Mack is a popular name right now flying around. Whatever it is, I think they're going to bring in enough bodies to where the ones who win the competition are the best for the job. And that's where I give grace for what they did with the cornerback position last year. Just going into it, assuming everybody's healthy, you looked like you had enough capable bodies in that room. You go through injuries, that's not the case, and obviously everybody thinks what they think about Jair, but you still need to probably get a high or a premium asset, whether it's a high draft pick or something, invested in your cornerback position. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where they have shown that they will stack a position with guys just to make sure the ones that win the competition are the best for the job. And I think they're going to do that not only at the pass rusher position, but I think they'll probably do that on the O-line. I think there's some good O-linemen, some guys that I've seen here at the Shrine Bowl this week that could be targeted by them. I'm not ready to talk about who's going where. It's just I'm not good at that yet. Like, we got to be honest about what we know about these guys. Yeah, it's just not enough. But we can start talking about who we like and who maybe the Packers are targeting. We pat ourselves on the back a little bit. This is the time of year that we were talking about last year. Jordan Morgan was one of the first ones we started talking about as being a O-lineman fit for the Packers. So, we'll figure out later on where we think these guys are going. But there are definitely plenty of guys here at the Shrine Bowl this week that look very ready to step in day one and compete for a job. They fit the mold. Almost all of these guys now understand that versatility on the offensive line is valuable. So there wasn't a single guy that I talked to that wasn't at least focused on that, right? If not already demonstrating that he can rotate at any of the positions. There's several guys that qualify for that. They're athletic, they're big. So, yeah, I mean, I think that the Packers will, with these positions where there's even question marks, I think you're going to see kind of an overcompensation like they've done, right? I mean, you've seen what Gute did with the safety position. He overcompensated. He went out, he got McKinney. Then he went out and he didn't get 1 draft pick. He didn't get 2 draft picks. He got 3 draft picks. Yeah. And then, so that room now looks totally different than it used to. So I think that's probably the silver lining for Packers fans is like, you've got a front office that is pretty good at acknowledging there's a problem and going after it. I mean, the kicker, another example of that. They didn't waste any time. So, well, we're going to try this guy for a whole year now and ho hum. No, they said, okay, that didn't work. They moved quick. I mean, it's, I guess, in the startup world, fail fast as a fun little cliche. They did that with the kicker, and now they've got the solution. So I think that's what we'll see from this front office, right? You realize that there's some gaps, there's some holes in production, we'll say, with your pass rusher position, with your cornerback position. Even the interior D line, I think you could use another body or two there. And there's some really good ones in this draft. Another tendency that we've talked about with Gute is taking guys from deep positions in the draft. Well, the deepest position in the draft this year might be the interior D line. A lot of big bodies that can get moving. Last year, we were talking about like two that were really big bodies, and that was about it. And, Tavondre Sweat turned out pretty good. I can't remember who the other one was. But this year, man, I can't even count them. There's a bunch of guys that are like 6'3 plus, 340, 330, 340, and they can move, and so it's going to be a good year for them to be able to add to this D line and add competition, but also add difference makers. There's a few names we'll get into here in a minute that I'm pretty excited about from the Shrine Bowl that I think could definitely be on the Packers' radar and would be impactful. But what I think what we should hope for is that they hone in, right? Let's not distract ourselves with things that are just not really necessary right now. And I know everybody's going to throw tomatoes at me when I say it. Receiver, right? Let's not distract ourselves with receiver right now. Let's not get all caught up on what fancy pass rusher we could try to find. I think really even linebacker, no need to really get caught up in that. There are some good players that they'll be able to get on day 3 at linebacker out of this draft. They're not legendary players. They're maybe not day 1 impact guys, but they'll be good special teams guys. They'll be good competition guys, be good depth guys. But yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what we got to hope for, is that they attack these things not with one shot, but with multiple shots. And if you can do that, like I said, if you're not players away from a championship, but you get more good players anyway, dang, that's a good place to be, right? And of course, that's my own opinion, but it's a good place to. My fan brain is pretty happy right now. Some other people, they're living in a pretty miserable fan world.
Well, that's just how some people are. Can't change how they are. But no, I agree with you. I think they're gonna focus on certain positions like they have done in the past, like you mentioned, safety, and know that they're positions of need, and they're going to go out there and target it in the offseason. That's going to include free agency and the draft. I think cornerback's one of those positions, because if they move on from Jair, and even if they don't, they need bodies there, and they need competition to start and play key roles on the defense. So I think that's one. Defensive line, I know they like a lot. They like the guys they have, and there's still a lot of development they can do there. But I think they have to add there. Maybe they don't go as aggressively with D-line as some other positions, but I think they will add some people to that room, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then offensive line, I mean, most likely, unless I still think there's a possibility Josh Myers is re-signed. But I think he probably at least gets to free agency, sees what's out there. And if there's not a whole lot out there, then maybe the Packers bring him back. But if they do lose him, obviously you need to figure out who's your starting center is going to be. Are they going to move Elton Jenkins? Is Jacob? I can't see him just handing it to Jacob Monk, but he would be in the mix. Sean Ryan could be a possibility to move as well. And then how does that change your guard position? So they're going to need potentially pretty immediate help, maybe a starter there at center, depending on what happens with Myers. But they need to develop depth too, because that's one of the things, we didn't see it until the playoff game, but they didn't have great depth along the offensive line.
No, that fell apart pretty quick.
Yeah, and they made it through the entire season with all 5 guys playing every game except for one. Josh Myers missed the first Detroit game. Other than that, all 5 of those guys played every game, which is a great thing.
That's a big deal. Yeah,
it's big, but it's not something that you can count on every year.
No,
it doesn't happen like that.
Well.
No, so you need depth, and it was a problem area at tackle during training camp, because nobody really kind of stood out, and they kept Andre Dillard. They used a draft pick on Travis Glover, and he was not ready. But because they used a draft pick, they kept him. And, we didn't really have to see him on the field until the Eagles game, and it wasn't pretty.
Not good.
Kadeem Telfort was there, and, maybe he was the best of the backup tackles, but you can't feel real comfortable with him being your next man up at tackle. So at the very least, they need to improve the depth, but they very well need a starter in the middle and improve depth. So expect them to go multiple offensive linemen again in the draft.
And I think it's a good draft for that, right? And what I would say about this draft, and at first I thought this was true about the receivers, but I think it's maybe true about a lot of the positions in this draft, is there's not as much star power as there was last year. There's a lot of star power last year. A lot of good players, big names. There's not a lot of star power. It's not a top-heavy draft, but there is value throughout. There is going to be value to be found all the way through the 7th round. And that's where it's a good time to be a Packers fan, because Gute's good at finding that. But I'm telling you, for these positions that they need, this draft, I think, is going to be nice to pick on day 3.
Yeah, and I mean, they have the track record of being very good at picking offensive linemen, especially those day 3 picks.
Right.
So you kind of just gotta trust them on those picks, because it holds up. Like, they've been really good picking them. So.
And that's a big deal, man. That, and I know people, you got to hit on your first round picks. And I'm not saying you don't have to, but hitting on those late round picks is the difference between being, again, in contention in the playoffs, even, or if you're not hitting on those late round picks and you're not hitting on your first round picks, you're in no man's land. You're in like Dallas Cowboy territory. Which, I guess maybe that's not a great example. I just like picking on them.
Yeah.
But, at where the Rams were a couple of years ago, I guess, they didn't have anything going for them there, and they were missing on picks. But, that's just a terrible place to be. So you definitely don't want to complain about that, because the other thing is it's a lot harder to hit on those 7th and those day 3 picks, those 7th round, day 3 picks, than it is on the first round picks. So if you're hitting on those later picks, slight tweak. Now you're hitting on both. That's big state. That's where you really want to be. And most GMs will never get to that place.
No,
most GMs are struggling, and that's the part that I think it's funny is Packers think there's this like perfect record GM out there somewhere.
And those day 3 picks, like, they're lottery tickets. Anything you hit on is a bonus, and most teams don't hit on any of them. So, and I always come back to, like, the first round is so overhyped, and everybody brings attention to, well, the Packers haven't been that good in the first round. It's like, well, yeah, they've missed, but they've come away with Jordan Love, Rashawn Gary, Jair before the injuries. Like,
and Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker. You don't have to love Quay Walker, but
right?
those
But
are real pieces.
What different? Like, just because they're a first round pick is they're a bust. But like, they found Zach Tom, the 4th round,
exactly,
5th round. Rasheed Walker was a 7th round pick. So like, if those guys were first round picks, you'd be like, that's a great pick.
Exactly.
Right?
And you just shift the others over, and that was a 4th round or a 7th round. Now we're happy about that.
So you just got to look at the draft overall, and look, you came out of it with your starting left tackles who are day 3, or starting tackles on offense who were day 3 picks. Like, that's a really good find. That's a really good draft. Like, who cares if, that can overcome if you missed on the first round pick. Like, okay, but you found 2 starting tackles on the 3rd day. That's a really good value to come out of your draft with. And I mean, they're going to probably pay Zach Tom a lot of money in the offseason, and it's well deserved. He's one of the better right tackles in football. And, I don't care where he was drafted or who was drafted in the first round before. I'm like,
don't care.
It doesn't matter as long as you have a good draft. The draft is more than one round, and people just forget that, I think, because every first round pick's got to be an all pro every season. So it goes deeper than that. But I guess to get a little deeper into the draft, you've been down there covering the Shrine Bowl every practice, checking out these guys right on the field with, the personnel scouts from all the NFL teams are down there. So what are you seeing? Who's standing out? Who's catching your attention? Who's meeting with the Packers? What are some of your takeaways from a few practices?
First of all, it's a neat experience. Getting to see these guys up close, you kind of see how size really makes a difference, or maybe doesn't make a difference in some cases. But you also see a little bit about, the personality. You can see a little bit about who's getting after it and who's not. There's definitely a few guys on the D line, especially, that you can learn about you learn about them and how they go through their drills, and when there's certain guys that every time they're doing a hitting drill or some kind of contact drill, you hear the loudest pop, you pay attention. Maybe it happens once. Okay, fine. But when the same guy is doing it every single time he's taking a rep, you start to notice stuff like that. And that's stuff you can't catch on TV or on Twitter clips or something like that. So it's been fun to get that view of it. But yeah, it's been a good week. I don't know how many meetings are normal for the Shrine Bowl, but it does seem like the Packers met with a lot of players here. They didn't meet with every player. There were several that I talked to they didn't meet with. One that I was disappointed that they didn't meet with was Noel Williams. I know the cornerback out of Cal is one that some folks are interested in. I thought his film looked pretty good. I was ready to dive into him a little bit more and probably still will, but they did not meet with him. But yeah, so they didn't meet with everybody, but they have met with a lot of guys, some interesting guys. One to keep an eye on, and definitely could be in that first round range that they're drafting in, is defensive tackle Kenneth Grant. Now, he hasn't practiced or played out here at the Shrine Bowl, but they did meet with him. He's an interesting character, very, very nice guy, very entertaining. He's outgoing, but he was very enthusiastic when I asked if he met with the Packers and how that went. So, and that's what these guys are here to do, right? They're here. They know they're in a job interview, whether they're talking to me or they're talking to NFL Network or they're talking to a coach or a scout. They know that everything that they say right now is being microanalyzed. So, but there's a lot of impressive guys. So some hot competition going on. First, I'll go through a quick list of who we were able to confirm that they met with. So Tim McKay, the lineman out of NC State, Tyler Barron, edge out of Miami, Kenneth Grant, the one I just mentioned, D-line out of Michigan, Kay Medrano, linebacker from UCLA, also looks like he could maybe play a little bit of an edge rush himself. He's a pretty athletic dude. But he also sounded very enthusiastic about his time with the Packers. He sounded like he really enjoyed it. Nazir Stackhouse, D-line from Georgia. Corey Thornton, a cornerback out of Louisville. I did ask him if he has any relationship with Jair Alexander. He does not, but he looks up to him and admires his game and obviously what he did at Louisville. So, and then Kobe Bryant was the last one I confirmed from day one, the corner out of Kansas. Kobe Bryant is one. We need to throw a flag up here. I'm waving. Like, hey, we need some attention on this one right here, because I know I'm not like discovering this guy. Some of you listening to us probably know who he is. His film is fantastic. He's had some good years at KU, but he's undersized, right? He's 170 pounds. I think that's what he weighed in at the Shrine Bowl, was 171 maybe. He is undersized. He's got some height. He's not super short. I think maybe 6'1". I'll have to go check if it was 6'1", on 6 foot or 6'1" on his height, something like that. But he does not know that he's undersized. He has no clue, no idea. And I will admit, when guys have pads on, it is definitely hard to tell the difference between 170 and 180, or even maybe 190. But that guy is everything you want your DBs to be, right? He backs it up. He's got the attitude. He's got the ability. He's physical. He was one of the most physical DBs at the Shrine Bowl. And he stopped practicing after practice 2. He had great practices. He accomplished what he needed to. No need to risk it. A couple guys did get hurt out here. So yeah, he did stop practicing. He didn't practice today, but he was out available for the media, and he's talked to a lot of people. That guy might be one that Packers actually consider breaking their mold for, depending on where his value ends up landing. I don't know that that's somebody that they would actually invest a first-round pick in. But, man, after that, all bets are off, because his film pops, and he absolutely backs it up with every single rep, whether it was a team rep, a one-on-one rep, a 7-on-7 rep, an individual rep. That dude, you could hear him, you could see him. He jumps off of everything. I can't say enough about Kobe Bryant. So he was one that really, really got a lot of people's attention.
And just some of the reviews too that I've been reading from other people that are down there are saying the same things that you're saying. Kobe Bryant's been one of the best players, offense or defense. He's been really good.
First rep, he came in against the tight end and just smacked that, but he came over his shoulder and knocked it out. Very physical rep, and against the tight end, little 170-pound dude, right? And then, he's supposed to be undersized. It was against the tight end, and he got physical with him to break it up. I'm telling you, he doesn't know that he's 170 pounds. He has no idea. Sorry, continue, Tim. I had to get that in there.
No. I'm just putting it out there. It's not just your eyes. A lot of people are in agreement with you that are down there, covering this thing as well, are saying he's one of the best players, through 3 practices, just consistently really good and really physical for a smaller size guy with a lot of, brashness to his game. So
yes,
interesting dude, interesting player.
A lot of chatter from him. He talks. Good guy though. When we got to talk to him out, off the field, very bright personality, big smiles, a lot of big smiles out of him. He's a pretty happy dude, but big attitude on the football field. So couldn't say enough about him. Some other players that they did meet with that we were able to confirm. Let me scroll back up here. Joe Huber, a lineman from Wisconsin. Another one, he's played all the offensive line positions, and he reiterated that he understood that the Packers value that, and pretty much everybody does. But and then Bryce Cabledew, offensive lineman from KU. He played tackle at KU, I believe, but he's another one that actually he's played more inside at the Shrine Bowl than he has out at tackle. He got some reps at tackle today. He's one I would really watch. Like that one, just as I was standing around kind of taking it in, my eyes kept finding him. He looks the part. He's got the size that the Packers look for. He's athletic. He's holding his own against all of these different D linemen that they've got here, fast and strong. So Bryce Cabledew out of KU, and here we go. I'm like the Jayhawks fan right now, right? I got Kobe Bryant, I got Bryce Cabledew. I did talk to Mello Dotson as well, the other cornerback out of KU that Dane Brugler actually had ranked higher on his first big board than Kobe Bryant. He might adjust that now. Right. I don't know. He was out at the Shrine Bowl, and I believe he still is. Taking it all in. So he might have some adjustments to his big board after this. But yeah, Mello Dotson's another one, not playing bad. He just doesn't jump out at you the way that Kobe Bryant did. I mean, Kobe Bryant really forced everybody to see him as soon as he took the field at the Shrine Bowl. So that was the big one there. And then a couple more guys that I was able to confirm that they met with. Syracuse DB Elijah Clark. He actually had a decent couple practices out here, got some attention. Cam Horsley, D lineman out of Boston College. He's one that I have really enjoyed at the Shrine Bowl. We'll get into him in just a minute. Let's see here. Who else did they meet? There's a couple more, I thought. CJ West, D lineman out of Indiana. Another one, keep an eye on. He definitely feels like a Packers type guy, depending on where he falls. And Jordan Phillips, D lineman out of Maryland.
He's another guy that I've been reading a lot about. He's had a really good week down there. So
he has had a very good week. And then last but not least, one that I haven't confirmed yet if he's met with the Packers, but I would imagine that he has. I'll hopefully be able to get this confirmed tomorrow or Wednesday. But Elijah Roberts from SMU. There's a clip going around on Twitter from Fran Duffy where he is tossing, I believe it's Trey Wedig, the tackle from Indiana, like an absolute rag doll. I mean, it is when I saw this, I had to watch it like 10 times to just see the force that he just rips a 310-pound man with. And then just kind of stands there casually after he's done. He doesn't even doesn't even break a sweat. That's one where, you know, Packers fans, if you're looking for a dude to maybe change the attitude off the Packers edge a little bit, he could be one. And that's one that I'm not sure where he falls, if he finds his way into the first round or where he's at. But the way he looked at the Shrine Bowl, especially today, somebody's going to be taking him. Somebody's going to be really excited to have him. And he definitely would bring a fun element to this Packers defense. So there's a few standouts. Cam Horsley was one that I've seen him all 3 days of practice so far. Just look good, man. He's consistently just strong, nasty, high energy. I hate using cliches about D linemen, but when you're watching these guys, that's something that you kind of appreciate because you see these reps over and over again, and you can see maybe the energy drops off after a few. And then with some guys, it just doesn't, man. Some guys bring it every single time, and you can tell it's a long day for the guys that have to go against them. So, yeah, shout out to Cam Horsley. We got to meet with him today. Neat dude. Very complimentary of Jeff Hafley and sounded like he would love to play in that system again. But, yeah, it's been a really good experience so far. There is plenty of talent here in the places that the Packers need it. So that is one thing I would say is very encouraging. Obviously, the Senior Bowl is getting fired up too, and they love plucking out of the Senior Bowl. So I imagine a lot of their guys are out there as well. I did confirm a Gute sighting. I was not able to do that with my eyes, but a very credible person here said that they were near Gute as he was watching receiver DB one-on-ones. So Gute did have his eyes on the DBs in this group. I imagine he's also maybe peeking at the receivers. But if I had to bet, I think he treats the receiver group this year like he treated the DBs last year, or the cornerbacks specifically, not the safeties, where you just don't get that investment unless it's a value play at the end.
I think he's taking one. I think he's taking one on day 2, but we'll get into that another time. So, yeah, I mean, the Shrine Bowl, there's some really good players. They had, I think it was 57 guys drafted last year. This is an event that they've really kind of built the last few years, especially like where they've gotten better players down there. You know, the Senior Bowl gets all the attention, and rightfully so. There's really good players. We'll talk about the Senior Bowl next week because that starts Tuesday with the practices going on there. And Packers love taking guys out of the Senior Bowl. But the Shrine Bowl's really come along too. And Zach Tom and John Runyon Jr. are two guys that the Packers drafted that played at the Shrine Bowl. And the Packers got, I think it's their assistant offensive line coaches down there coaching one of the positions. So that's valuable. Got him in the room with these guys. So
they've got Eddie Gordon, assistant O-line coach. They also have Sean Duggan, assistant linebacker coach.
That's right. Yeah, they had a defensive player or defensive coach as well. That's right.
So all right, you know, we'll take a little aside here. This won't take long. Little, what do they call it? Spilling the tea? Is that what it is?
I don't know if that's the right way, but yeah, something like that.
I don't know. Something like that. Let's share the gossip. So from the media world, which I am just getting introduced to, right? I've never been a credentialed reporter on the ground before at one of these events. It's interesting to see how things work. Every team truly operates differently. Like some teams, they've got like a squad, right? And they huddle up and they, you know, get their game plan together, and then you can see them kind of disperse around the field and follow different things. And then at the end, they're huddled back up again, and, you know, they're on it. And I'm not going to name team names here, but every team is different. Some teams have no presence at all. And that's not to say that they don't have a presence at all, because I guarantee they have eyes here, but you cannot find them.
Right. And
those are people that I'm looking for. But anyway, that's been interesting to see that. So I was able to, at the end of one of the practices today, actually approach Coach Duggan and ask him if he was able to give me an interview. And he did actually have to request permission from the team first. So just to tell you, like, that's how the Packers operate, right? Like they are very, very secure with the information that leaves the organization. And that is not to complain. That's not to dog them in any way. It's simply an observation that I found really, really interesting. And it's again, different across the league. Like there were GMs I was able to just walk right next to, right? I could, hey, what's up, man? Go up, shake hands if I want, right? Now, don't do that. Don't go interrupt these guys. They're working. But yeah, that just kind of lets you know, like different teams have different approaches and how they approach this, security of what they're doing and everything. The Packers are very secure. And I do think that that's probably ultimately a good thing. With the media, we don't get all the bones that we want, and that's okay. I totally get that. I was actually very pleased that Coach Duggan was willing to even try. When he told me that he would need to get permission for that I figured he would just not. So, hopefully we will get a little interview, but if not, it's totally understood. But either way, it's neat to be out here to get the observation of how this is going. And it is just as much of an opportunity for these coaches like Coach Duggan and Coach Gordon. To get their hands-on experience, to work with some of these guys. And I think that, they're able to learn just as much, right? They're learning things from these guys. They're learning things as coaches on, what works and what doesn't. What do these guys respond to and what don't they? So it's just fascinating being on the ground. But I will say this, I've kind of, the general buzz at this Shrine Bowl is that this one is I don't know if it's the best. I don't know if you can even get to that kind of comparison, but this is a good year for the Shrine Bowl. I think they've done it really well. They've run a good event so far. There's been no real issues or with anything, but very impressed with the players. Outside of the competition that they've had and what's been going on, a lot of upstanding gentlemen, and I think I kind of had an expectation as a media member that maybe you're sort of like, I don't know, I don't want to talk to that guy or that kind of thing. Maybe you're like a pester. Not at all. Every single one of these guys, smile on his face. I've been called sir way more than I want to be called sir this week. I'll just say that. I don't like that, but I get it. I'm an older guy now. Their kids they're 22 years old and whatever. But anyway, it's just neat. They're upstanding gentlemen. They understand that they're here for a job interview, and they're out here trying to figure it out, man. So it's just cool to get that perspective and to kind of see who is really maybe starting to enter the radar for the Packers. I think the folks that they met with this week, and again, I'll try to confirm a few more throughout the week. Those will be the ones that we want to at least start putting some attention on, right? It's not to say that if they didn't meet with them, that it's hopeless. They'll never draft them. Nothing like that. But again, this is when we started, aligning on targets like Jordan Morgan last year. So, that's what we want to try to do, is figure out who these guys are, dig into them. And then, when draft day comes, hopefully we know something about the guys that they're picking and we can be excited about them and all that. And who knows, maybe some of these guys from the Shrine Bowl will jump on the pod with us if they get drafted by the Packers. It'd be kind of cool.
Should be nice. And it kind of gives you, some guys to research and look at. That, hey, Packers met with them. There's at least some sort of interest. Maybe it doesn't result in anything, but could be a guy that they take in the draft or they sign after the draft as a free agent. And even some of the guys that they haven't met with, maybe they have, and it's just not out there in practice. It's, in a hotel or wherever that they have access to them outside of the football field. So who knows? But it's definitely, a starting point for learning more about these players who are potential future Packers.
Absolutely. And that's all we can do now, right? Like, we're in the off season. That's the best thing we can do. We're not going to, waste our time on, just a bunch of guys that are, I guess, fun to watch or look at or something. I mean, we're really going to try to drill in on who we think the Packers are drilling in on and run alongside of that. So the way the rest of this week works, there's one more practice tomorrow. Then Wednesday is a media day thing. And then Thursday is the game. We'll be at the game on the sideline. So that'll be kind of fun. So if you guys have anything, that you want to know about any of these players from the Shrine Bowl, shoot us a tweet. Maybe we'll be able to find out and ask them some questions. But ultimately just going to be trying to confirm who met with the Packers, and, that should give us a good sign of who they're, where the Packers are focusing their attention. But like I said, there are players they did not meet with, right? So it's not like they met with everybody here. For example, I don't know that they spent much time with Shedeur Sanders. He was here making the rounds. But there were definitely a small number of teams that took up the majority of his time. And Brian Dable was here, if that's any indication. He spent quite a bit of time here.
I'm sure he got to talk to the Titans and the Giants and those teams at the top of the draft.
Yeah, that's who he was spending his time with, Titans, Giants. I think, obviously there's more than that, but that was the noticeable presence. But yeah, so that, the Packers aren't spending a lot of time on certain places. I really didn't spend much time tracking the safeties at the Shrine Bowl. There are some good ones here. But I think the way that the Packers safety room is right now, I'm just not sure how much room there is for another body, especially when you could use bodies in other places. But yeah, so we'll see. Yeah, tight end is something. There's a good tight end group here at the Shrine Bowl, and just in this draft class, it's probably a little deeper than last year's tight end group. Although maybe not as, I don't know. The last tight, it was basically Brock Bowers last year, right? Did anybody else do well out of the tight end group last year?
Bowers was incredible. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Yeah, I didn't hear of any other rookies that.
Nobody comes to mind, but we may be missing a guy or two that was really good as a rookie tight end. But
if you're screaming at the radio right now, I apologize. But yeah, so tight end position wasn't great last year, so I think it's not hard to be better this year, but it should be better this year. It's deeper. There's definitely some guys here at the Shrine Bowl that look pretty good, and they're probably not high on the board right now. The tight end out of Syracuse comes to mind. He made some phenomenal catches today. He's a big dude too that considers him a blocker first. So, that's a nice mentality to have when you can make some real catches. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting time here, getting to see all these guys. Another star of the show. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because it's kind of funny how these guys tend to surface this time of year. But Efton Chisholm out of Eastern Washington is the copy and paste of Cooper Kupp, but he shrunk a little bit. He's not quite as tall as Cooper Kupp, but he's another one. Don't tell him that. He's been holding his own and doing very well here at the Shrine Bowl. He's a guy, basically what I've heard from the chatter is he's not going to run a 40 very fast. But if you watch his routes, my goodness, he's going to find his way on a roster. It may not be, high in the draft, but there is a place for in the NFL for this guy. And, a lot of people are going to wonder who he is and where he came from. But I mean, some of the one-on-ones that he won today were borderline embarrassing for the DBs. There was a couple that you almost felt bad for the DB because he just burned them. And it's with his routes, not necessarily just the speed.
Right.
So yeah, it's been fun to watch guys like that. And I think that the Shrine Bowl definitely offers that opportunity, especially when there's a little bit of overlap with the Senior Bowl like there is this time. So it's fun to see this. It's fun to see these guys out here competing. And we'll learn a lot from the game. But we got one more day of practice tomorrow. We'll have some clips coming for you guys. I got a lot of clips that we'll be able to put out there of some one-on-ones and some different things like that. So yeah, keep an eye out for the Shrine Bowl content. And obviously we're going to keep going through this draft season, kind of building our own board, so to speak, right? I'm already kind of working on mine, Tim. I don't know if you're going to make a board this year.
We'll see. We'll see. It's in the early stages. I'm just getting the draft stuff, transitioning. And it's, got the Shrine Bowl this week and Senior Bowl starting as well. So really starting to get into draft season. So yeah, it's nice to get a look at these guys that we're going to be talking a lot about over the next few months.
Our friend Daryl here, Maxwell Hairston is another good option at cornerback, Kentucky University. Absolutely. Appreciate you hanging out with us, Daryl. See you in the comments, man. Thank you for being out with us. Man, you've been with us for a few weeks now. It's nice to have you along. But yeah, that's any of these suggestions you guys have, bring them at us. Let's go. Let's talk about these guys. Who are they? Who could they be? And we're going to do this every week until the draft. And then we'll have a whole new set of Packers to talk about until the season starts. But yeah, that's what we're going to be trying to do. It's a good, healthy list here from the Shrine Bowl, and we'll keep building on that. But we've gone already over an hour, so we'll probably wrap that up here. Appreciate you guys for listening with us this evening on the Pack Weekly podcast. If you guys would, please spike that like button for us. Hit that subscribe button on the Packers Talk YouTube channel. Go over there. Do it right now. Right now. It'll only take you a second. And we greatly appreciate it. We got more coverage from the Shrine Bowl coming for you later this week. Keep an eye on the Twitter. That's where the fun stuff will be flying with the clips and all the takes and things like that, little updates. And then obviously we will certainly be back next Monday, streaming live 9:30 Central Time, getting into some Senior Bowl action, some recapping of the Shrine Bowl. Who knows what kind of stuff we'll have to talk about. I mean, shoot, we had personnel moves we had to get into today with Bisaccia and Getsy. And that's still a developing situation because Getsy's like a mystery position that we don't really know what he's doing. So we'll see if we got more information on that later next week. So plenty of Packers talk, guys. We're in the offseason, but we're going to make it, right? It's going to go by in a flash. And before we know it, training camp will be upon us and we will be in the Super Bowl mentality again. Right, Tim?
Yes. Yeah, it's all going to happen fast. I mean, it seems like everything's a long way off, and it is, but it goes fast, as we just saw with the season that flew by. So, yeah, it stinks that our team's not playing again in a couple weeks, but, that's the reality, and we'll start getting into how they're going to build their team for 2025, and that's exciting as well. And there's going to be a lot to talk about. At some point, we definitely will discuss the receivers, but for right now, we'll let Packers Twitter debate all that. But a lot of exciting things that are going to be going on, and we'll have plenty to say and plenty to break down with the draft and free agency coming up.
Well, yeah, the free agency comes first, right? So, if the way Gute has handled other issues, positions in the past is an indication, we should get some free agency movement, maybe at the corner position or somewhere in the trenches. So, it's coming right. It's right around the corner. Free agency is not far away. So we'll have plenty to talk about. Yeah, y'all jump over there. I'm going to say it again. Please do us a big favor and go over to the Packers Talk YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little notification thing, all that kind of stuff. We don't have the fancy graphics to pop in your face and tell you to go do that. But go do that right now. And we greatly appreciate y'all. We love y'all for hanging out with us. And we are going to see you next week, Packers fans. And as always,